Bated breath, the nation waited to hear from the president last night, following a week of speculation and much chatter about the state of our law enforcement. The question on everyone's lips was, how would the commander-in-chief meet the moment? Serious allegations of links to the criminal underworld have been leveled against his Minister of Police, Senzo Mchunu, along with charges and allegations facing some of the top brass in law enforcement. What would he do? There are also serious questions about the integrity of a number of other ministers in cabinet. Would he therefore institute a wholesale reshuffle? Well, we know he didn't. To tell us why is his spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya. Always a pleasure to have you on the show, and thank you for your time this morning.
Morning, Pele, and morning to your listeners.
All right, let's just get some clarity on some of what the president said yesterday. For example, that Minister Mchunu is now going to be on special leave. So as I understand it, that's not a suspension. I'm just trying to figure out what the provision is to have two ministers of police at the same time. I mean, is it not that you either are a police minister or you are not?
Well, Bongani, the president has some room here to determine the status of ministers. And in this case, what guided him was that in the process of the inquiry, with Minister Mchunu being the implicated party, he cannot be in the position running the ministry and providing the mandated political oversight. And so, if you like, you can call it a step aside, or you can reference it in another way. But in essence, is that inquiry must be allowed to go through without any suspicion or apprehension about potential interference, and therefore the minister could not be in his role, hence the leave of absence that the president has granted him.
Let's talk about practicalities then in that regard. Will he still have access to cabinet clearances, discussions, and all the accorded privileges, right down presumably to staff and protection, or is he now just an ordinary MP?
No, he won't have any access to cabinet meetings or cabinet minutes rather. So his cabinet involvement and membership, you can call it, will be temporarily suspended at this stage. Protection, yes. One will need to clarify the issue of staff with respect to, number one, their existence, considering that the new minister may very well need to bring his own staff, and it will only be fair for the new minister to be allowed to do so.
So, again, what happens to all the people who would have been working in his office, working closely with him, including, say, for example, his spokespeople?
Well, you know, these contracts, when you work for a political principle, like in my case, those are what we call term of office contracts. So you're only in the job for as long as your principal is in the job. So as I said, Bongani, one will need to just double check and clarify the status of the support staff during the course of the leave of absence. I will imagine that some of the staff, like your advisors, will be required to assist the minister prepare for his appearance in the inquiry. But the other staff members, in terms of office support, may very well be integrated with the new minister.
Critics will say, here we go again, another commission to uncover what is not hidden in plain sight.
Well, one understands and appreciates the sort of commission inquiry fatigue that has set in our country, and that is partly due to institutional inadequacies with respect to speedy prosecutions or follow-ups arising from the conclusion of various commissions and following up on the recommendations. However, in our constitution, the power to institute a commission of inquiry for the president remains. Secondly, there was no other option for the president in this case. You could not have had SAPS investigating itself. I mean, over and above the minister, Bongani, Lieutenant General Mkhwana has raised issues of institutional capacity or institutional integrity at SAPS, where the organization itself in some areas and critical areas for that matter may be compromised. And so you could not expect SAPS or any of its branches to investigate the matter. Equally, you could not expect the NPA to take charge of the matter when they themselves have been fingered by Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi. And so the best way in terms of the most competent, independent, not implicated mechanism to look into this matter was the Commission of Inquiry, notwithstanding the fatigue that we may all have with respect to commissions.
Fair enough, but we've had similar processes, not quite a commission of inquiry in this example, but I remember Dr. Sidney Mufamadi, for example, looking into our intelligence services, and still we had the July insurrection, to use the president's words. One of the things that's been much a part of the chatter of late following Mkhwanazi's revelations was, if he is touched, we might see July 2021 recur. So we've had processes that look at what has gone wrong, but we don't, as a public, I think, generally have confidence that it won't happen again.
Well, I mean, in this case, one of the other guiding principles was the need for transparency. So Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi called a media conference, aired all of these issues in the public domain. It will have been difficult to then justify a panel that will be operating behind closed doors, as you've heard in the past, when you have national security sensitive areas to look into, like the Mufamadi panel, for example.
If I may come in there, Vincent, sorry, I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Sure.
I'm not saying that the president shouldn't have instituted a commission of inquiry. I'm saying we've had this kind of look into intelligence services followed up by spectacular failures. And so part of the lack of confidence, presumably in this process, is people will say, hang on, you have these commissions, you find out what is wrong, but nothing gets done. I mean, the NPA has been begging, for example, for detailed access to state capture commission records so they can prosecute, and they say they haven't been given those. So although we all saw what the commission found and recommended, very little action follows.
Well, Bongani, I'll challenge you on 2 points there. One, with respect to looking into intelligence failures, over the past, 2-3 years, a considerable amount of work has been done, particularly with respect to improving our intelligence services. Minister Nkabane tomorrow will be tabling her budget vote speech and outlining the process there and the work that has been done. But in this particular case, Bongani, you'll appreciate that we have a number of law enforcement agencies that have been implicated by Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi. And we need to look at the entirety of the criminal justice system, including the judiciary. And so we cannot, I suppose, burden this commission with past inadequacies. Even with Zondo, the challenge there is not so much inaction. The challenge is the speed of action, admittedly. And we are working on trying to accelerate that process to get prosecutions going out of that commission. You also know that out of that commission, a number of implicated individuals have taken that report on review, which in itself has then delayed the speed in which the NPA and other law enforcement agencies could move.
And in this regard, many members of the public will be saying all of those who were implicated by General Mkhwanazi, particularly, of course, the criminal underlords or overlords, will now be scrambling to clean up their acts.
Well, some of them are going through trial as we speak, and so that's going to be quite difficult for them to do. In terms of the others, we don't have names, Bongani, to know who will be doing that, because General Mkhwanazi just made general references, except for 1 or 2 individuals that he named directly.
Well, he mentioned,
and so that's the difficulty of the issue.
He mentioned the dockets. So since the disbanding of that task team, what happens to those?
Well, that's going to be part of the process that the inquiry will look into, and we'll take the issues from there. We cannot preempt the outcome of the inquiry in terms of specifics in this regard.
Okay. Would you agree with me, Vincent, that at the moment, and it is unfortunate, but at the moment, public confidence in law enforcement broadly is low. We've seen in recent weeks members of the top brass of law enforcement charged. The head of crime intelligence is facing charges. His junior in this province is facing charges. There's been suggestion that the national commissioner himself might face charges, and indeed General Mkhwanazi might also be answering questions, and there are others. On what basis in that context would or should the public have confidence that all is in order?
No, I will agree with you 100%, Bongani, that rightly so, public confidence levels will be low in this case. I mean, what we expect from the top brass of the SAPS is nothing but highest levels of integrity and individuals that are above reproach. And so when you have such incidents, it is, occurrences of grave concern and concern to our national security. But if you put it into perspective, the SAPS is an enormous institution. It's a huge institution. And in terms of scale, we have a few individuals that are implicated. Yes, it dominates headlines and it makes all sorts of, it raises all sorts of concerns. But on a day-to-day basis, there are parts of the SAPS that continue to function very well, where progress is being made. For example, you will have noted the progress that has been made with respect to dealing with cash in transit crimes, for example. You know, in KZN, in Gauteng, where we've seen intelligence elements of SAPS coming to the party in stemming those robberies before they even occur. And so, yes, it is worrying, but we're not in a case where the entire organization has been destabilized and it's not functioning.
Look, Vincent, no one would say nothing is being done. I think part of the disappointment last night was, of course, Mkhunu has not been the only minister who has faced serious allegations of wrongdoing of late. So firstly, can you confirm, as was reported, I think, in the Sunday Times yesterday, that the higher education minister was recalled from going to that trip to China with the deputy president as part of that delegation as she sat at the airport lounge, it was reported. Can you confirm that?
Yeah, I can confirm that the minister was denied permission to travel to China. And I can also confirm that the matter around the Minister of Higher Education and Training remains top priority on the President's action list, and it is a matter that he's attending to.
So again, there was this expectation that this was a perfect opportunity for him to grasp the nettle and say he will deal not only with one minister, but indeed with all those who are facing these clouds over their heads, because, of course, as we all know, they serve at his pleasure ultimately.
Well, unfortunately, that expectation was misplaced because our advisory was quite clear that the president will be addressing matters of national security following on the media briefing that was held by General Mkhwanazi.
And that was that. All right, Vincent Magwenya, appreciate your time. Presidential spokesperson there, explaining why the president made the choices he did last night in announcing Senzo Mkhunu as a minister now on special leave. So he remains apparently a minister with not very much to do, I would expect, except to prepare for his appearances before this commission whenever that might be required. How does all that sit with you? Do you feel that the president grasped the nettle, understood the moment, rose to the occasion?
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions.
Your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.